Hey guys, welcome to lesson 7.6, and we're going to be talking about complex numbers. So a square root of a negative number is called an imaginary number. When you add a real number and an imaginary number together, that is called a complex number. And so it's always in the form a plus bi. So you're going to do your real number first, and then whatever coefficient that's attached to the I, that comes second. So if you have to, that's how you handle that. Okay, so let's look at this one. So the square root of -4. So the negative, technically, that's like -1 times 4. So anytime you have a negative, that's going to come out as an I. And then the 4, the square root of 4 is 2. So our answer here is 2I. Okay, so let's do -12. So I have -1 times 4 times 3. So that negative comes out as an I, the 4 comes out as a 2, and then the 3 stays inside. So I have 2I square root of 3. Okay, so let's get a little bit more complex. So here we are going to add the like terms and subtract the like terms. So again, hear me say like terms. So I'm just going to combine the 7 and 2, which is 9. And then I have this, so the square root of -9. So let's think about that. The square root of -9, that negative comes out as an I, and the 9 comes out as a 3. So I have plus 3I and then minus this 4I. So again, I'm going to combine these like terms, and so I have 9 minus I. So notice it's following this up here. So my real number goes first, followed by imaginary number. So this one I'm going to do the same thing. So 5 minus 8 is -3, and then I have -2 minus 10 is -12I. Okay, now we're going to talk about the powers of I. So I want you to write it in this form. And we're going to repeat them over here. So we're going to get to that in a second, but not right this very second. So anything to the 0 power is 1. So I to the first power, that's just simply going to be I. I to the second power, so let's think about that. That is if I is negative square root of 1 times negative square root of 1, I'm sorry, I said that wrong. Square root of -1 times square root of -1, that is going to be -1. So I squared is -1. So let's mark these. Okay, I to the third power is going to be these two multiplied together. So I squared times I, that's going to be -1 times I is -I. Okay, so what happens is when we go through, like let's say I to the fourth power, that is going to be the same as this. So I'm going to show you. So I to the fourth power, we could technically like multiply all of these together, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to look at it as I squared times I squared. Well, I squared is -1 times -1, and that gives me a +1. So I to the fourth is +1. I to the fifth is +1 times, so I to the fourth times I, which is I. I to the sixth is I to the fourth, which is 1. So I'm going to just call that 1 times I squared. So that's going to be -1. And I to the seventh is going to be I to the fourth times I to the third, and I to the third was -I. So we just have -I. So if you'll see, if you're kind of getting the idea, we're multiplying everything by I to the fourth and then taking what's left over, which ends up being this. So my point is this is very cyclical. So, so anytime I have a multiple of I to a fourth multiple, so a multiple of 4, my answer is always going to be 1. And then just kind of it goes on from there. So I to the 9th is going to be I to the 10th is going to be -1, and I to the 11th is going to be -I. So then if I kept going, I to the 12th is going to equal 1 again. So what happens, this actually was a problem. I don't know if it was this exact number, but this was actually a problem when I took the ACT, and I was really sad because I couldn't figure it out. And then I went to my teacher and I asked her, and I felt really stupid because these are actually really easy problems. So what you do is you figure out like the closest number that it's like by 4. So how many 4s go into this? So 4 goes into this how many times? So it doesn't matter, like the division rules for 4 is if you look at the last 2 numbers, and if they're divisible by 4, the whole thing is divisible by 4. So this number is actually a multiple of 4. So if it's a multiple of 4, then I know that it's going to be 1 automatically. So my answer to this whole thing is 1. So let's do another one, like I to the 105th power. Well, I know that I to the 104 power would be 1 because that's a multiple of 4. So I to the 105th power, so it goes 1I, would be just I. So sometimes that's really helpful when you come to problems like that. Okay, so now we're going to talk about multiplying and dividing these. So let's focus on the multiplying first. So we're just going to distribute and multiply these 2 binomials together. So let's see, I have -18 minus 6I plus 30I plus 10I squared. So remember what I said about I squared right here. Anytime you have I squared, that's -1. So I know that this is now -1. So what that's going to do is that's going to change that to a -10. So I have -18 minus 10 minus 6I plus 30. So this is going to be -28. And notice my real number is going first, followed by my imaginary number. So it looks like that. Hopefully you can see that this one is a conjugate. So remember, we just need to worry about the first and last terms because the middle terms will always cancel out. So I have 25 minus 4I squared. And so just like before, this is going to change the sign to make it different. So now it's a positive. So now I have 25 plus 4. So notice that I completely goes away. It's not there anymore. And so my answer is 29. Okay, for this one, make sure that you know it's the same thing as this. And then go ahead and multiply everything through. So I have 121, and then I have plus 110 plus 110 is 220I. And then I have plus 100I squared. So this cancels, and that makes it a negative. So I have 121 minus 100 is 21 plus 220I. So the thing about dividing is I's are square roots in disguise. So when I see an I, I'm going to have to rationalize the denominator because I can't have a square root in the denominator. So in this case, if I multiply them both times I, so I times I, let's go up here again, I times I is -1. So I'm going to there it is. I'm going to say 2i on top, and then I have 5 times negative 1. So I have 2i over negative 5, or a lot of times we separate it into 2/5 I. And the reason we do that, let's go up to the very, very top, because notice, where is it? Right here, that b, that's our coefficient of the I. So it's really easy to see when we pull it apart that our b is negative 2/5. Okay, what's bad is when you have a number in the denominator, you have to multiply by the conjugate to get rid of it. So I'm going to multiply both the top and bottom by 4 minus 3i. And remember what we said with conjugates right here is all we have to worry about is the first and last terms, because the middle terms will cancel out. So I have 16, and then I have minus 9i squared. So that is going to become a 16 plus 9, which is 25. So on top, I'm just going to distribute this 2. So I have 8 minus 6i. And then again, I want to put it in that a plus bi form, so I am going to separate it. So I have 8 over 25 minus 6 over 25i. So this is my a, and that is my b. Okay, so the last one, I'm going to multiply it by 2 minus I. So on the bottom, I have 4 minus I squared. So this is a little bit different. So I squared is negative 1. So I have 4 minus negative 1, which is 5. So I know that I'm going to have a 5 on the bottom. And what's kind of yucky about the top is I'm going to have to FOIL these. And I can't like take a shortcut because they're not conjugates. So I have 4, and then I have, let's see, minus 10i. And then I have minus 2i. And then for this last one right there, I have plus 5i squared. Okay, so this squared is going to make that to negative 5. So I'm going to combine these. So 4 minus 5 is negative 1. And then I have minus 12i over 5. So again, I'm going to separate it. Negative 1/5 minus 12/5 I. And that's my final answer. Okay, so the last problem that we're going to do, we're going to talk about solving. And so we just want to get the x by itself. That's our first goal. So I'm going to get rid of the junk out here. So I'm going to add 1. And then I'm going to divide by 4. So that gets rid of that junk on the outside. Okay, so as you've learned before in the past in Algebra 2 and in this class, to get this by itself, you're going to take the square root of both sides. So I end up with 5x plus 2 on the left, but on the right, look, I'm taking the square root of a negative number. So that's going to be plus or minus, but it's going to be 5i. Okay, so there's not a whole lot we can do with it, so we're just going to break down to get this x by itself. So I'm going to subtract 2. So notice where I put that 2, negative 2 plus or minus 5i, and then I'm going to divide by 5. So I'm going to go ahead and split it up. So x equals negative 2/5 plus or minus, and look at this, 5 over 5, that's 1. So it's just going to be negative 2/5 plus or minus I. And we are done.